Hello again and welcome to Who's Your Daddy, the first ever parenting show hosted by a man, me. I'm Marlon Abrahams. Well, tonight we're discussing a subject that's probably one of the most important and tricky issues to handle as a parent. I should know. Discipline. How do you affect it? What works best? And what are the latest developments around this issue? Were our parents wrong when they beat the crap out of us, like mine did? Or does corporal punishment have its place? After all, I think I turned out pretty good. Or did I? Well, it's definitely a contentious issue, and I guess will always continue to be as long as there are parents and kids. Before we get into it, just a quick reminder to read my columns on samen.co.za, parent24.com, and of course, in the Saturday Star every Saturday. And also remember that all the previous shows are now available on YouTube, so if you've missed out on it, please join me on Facebook, send me a friend request, and follow the links to the shows on YouTube. Or if you prefer, you can follow me on Twitter at who'syourdaddy8, or drop me an email. All my contact details will be on the show, or rather on the screen after the show. Now, let's introduce my guest for tonight's show. Welcome to Pauline Mulkerins. Now, Pauline is somewhat of an expert in a new discipline technique, which is rather different to what our parents' generation was used to. And welcome to educational psychologist Layla Abdul Ghafoor. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Layla, let's start with you. I think everybody knows discipline is important, but why is discipline important for our kids?
I think discipline is very important for kids because kids need boundaries in order to function. I think we all need boundaries in order to function. Boundaries teach us exactly what we should be doing, the direction in which we should be going, and it also teaches us how to navigate life. You know, it teaches us skills which we then use later on in our life. For example, later on when you start at school or at university, you still need boundaries in order to function effectively. Even when you're married, in a marriage, there needs to be boundaries. So discipline's very important to me.
So I think it's also the kind of discipline also becomes important, because from what I'm hearing you saying, that whatever happens as a kid, you're talking about university and obviously adult life, it starts off at childhood and continues, which makes it more critical, the kind of discipline.
Very critical.
Pauline, let's jump to you quickly.
Yeah.
This new technique you're talking about, 1, 2, 3 magic.
Yes.
Tell us a bit more about it and how it differs from the past.
It's new to South Africa. I'm bringing it to South Africa. I'm the first person trained in 1, 2, 3 Magic. 1, 2, 3 Magic is a program developed by Dr. Thomas Phelan about 20 years ago.
Feline as in cat?
No, Phelan.
Okay, cool.
No, cat man. And it's all about, it's an actual instructional process, method given to the parents on how to discipline. So instead of giving you a lot of mumbo jumbo about development and how your child feels and what which are important issues, it gives the parents direct navigation through disciplining, which is what parents are craving. You know, they say to someone, they go to a teacher, I don't know what to do.
Okay, now let's give me a practical example. I mean, I have issues with my 6-year-old where I will say to her, or not now, when she was 3 years old, for example, I remember this very clearly. She wanted to put her finger into the socket, you know. So you say, baby, don't do that, because if you do, you will shock and die, and then daddy will be very sad. Now my 11-year-old, when I did that, had that conversation with her at 2, would look at me, process, and literally never do it again. Madison looks at me, smiles nicely, understands, and the finger, 1, 2, 3 magic. How do I deal with that?
You look at so your 6-year-old's going for the socket. You're 15 feet away. You can't get there in time. You can't get proper eye contact. Madison, that's 1. Madison, that's 2. Madison, that's 3. Timeout. So you're stopping the behavior. You're giving the child a chance to realize that maybe I'm not doing something that I should be doing. And then when you get to 3, it's a timeout. Or a timeout alternative, which also, you know, you can't always put a kid in timeout, or sometimes timeouts don't work for every child.
I agree with timeouts, but I feel like it's very important in that situation to separate for your child that you love her still, but you don't love the action. So you ensure that when you say it to her, I love you, but I don't like it when you do this because I love you so much. I don't want you to hurt yourself in that socket. And you reinforce, you know, if she moves away from it, you then reinforce that to her. Reinforce, you're such a good girl, you know.
I always say, good choice. Good choice.
It's good.
What is obviously everybody's now running away from the whole corporal punishment thing. I mean, it's illegal at schools. You know, we don't do it. We're not supposed to do it, and that kind of thing. Yet, you know, I used to get beaten up quite regularly by my mom. And at the time, it wasn't really an issue for some reason. I mean, that's the way we grew up.
in that time.
And as I say, I think I came out pretty normal. But why is it bad?
Well, where this leaves us now is at a point where, okay, they all did it. I don't want to do that to my kids, but I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And in comes something like 1, 2, 3 Magic, where the parents have a really clear idea of what's to be done. And the other thing is, when you're done counting them, you don't sit there and explain it to them. You let it go. Because I think a lot of the times we're talking too much to our kids. It's too much information. We're busy, and our kids are very busy.
Yeah.
And so giving them an idea of there's a consequence for that particular action. And the other basic rule, 1, 2, 3 Magic is very simple, but it's not easy, because the next step is there's no talking and there's no emotion. Kids throwing a tantrum, that's 1.
Okay.
That's 2. That's 3, timeout. They go to their timeout, they come back out, you don't bring it up again. Of course, there are situations where an explanation is necessary, like a cuss word or something like that, where you have to say, we don't say those things. But other than that, it's done. And that teaches them that you love them, but you don't like that behavior, and that's not acceptable.
And I feel so otherwise to that. I feel
Do tell.
it's so. I think that it's so important for the child to know what they did wrong, because you know, if you tell someone don't do that, they're going to constantly wonder, why shouldn't I do that? What is the reason behind this? You know, if you have some kind of an explanation, then it kind of explains to the child, okay, I shouldn't be doing this because this, that, and that will happen to me. And it also gives them understanding, you know, in just in terms of their own development.
I want to talk to you a little bit more about the psychological impact and effects of discipline. But what I wanted to ask you before I get to you, Layla, is, Pauline, timeouts, typically how long should that last? I'm never sure how long I should keep Madison in the bathroom.
1 minute
per age.
1 minute per
year.
So Madison should get 6 minutes.
Yeah.
But if they are like 3 years and below, I wouldn't do 1 minute for a 3-year-old to sit for 3 minutes. It's a little too long. I would do a minute then.
Yeah. The other thing is, a lot of people say, but timeouts don't work. I put my kid in timeout and it doesn't work. I go, do you go up to the door, open the door and say, do you know why you're in here? Do you know what you did? Because you're starting a fight. And the punishment goes on and on and on. And you, with 1, 2, 3, it's over, it's done. And you can get on to the positive stuff and being a positive
So what do you
parent.
do when, okay, so now something's happened, you 1, 2, 3, whatever, and then you go to timeout. So in Madison's case, 6 minutes. But now when I get her out of jail, what do I do then? Am I nice and loving or whatever?
It shouldn't be seen as jail. It should be
you know what
seen
I
as a
mean.
room where she can't play with her toys or do the things that she wants to do.
Typically it's the
And then
bathroom
when you take her out, I would say give her a hug and say, I love you very much and I want to teach you how to have the best possible behavior. And then do something positive together, you know, something nice together.
Engaging.
And leave it in the past. I mean, you've already told her everything before you put her in that room.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
you
let's
don't want
look
to
at
break the self-esteem.
Let's look at the psychological impact of discipline. Why, in some examples, kids who have suffered corporal punishment end up, you know, being abusers themselves or resort to violence. Obviously, I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see the connection. And then why do people like me, who has, you know, been beaten up and whatever, I've never resorted to that. I mean, what makes us different, and why should parents be aware of the impact?
I think some people are just stronger. They have a more of a resilient, a higher internal locus of control. You know, some people are stronger than other people. But for most children, when you scream at your child and you hit your child, you make them feel guilty. You break their self-esteem, you break them down, and they don't trust you anymore. They don't feel as if you are a safe person that they can then reach out to. And then they displace that anger, and they can either become very, very, very difficult to discipline and be very naughty, or on the other hand, they can keep it inside, and then, as you said, later on, take it out on the rest of society, because that's what their perception of the world is. Remember, for a child, their socialization initially is the home. This is what the world is. This is the way the world works. That's why you pick up habits from your family and they, you know, reciprocate in your life.
Yeah, I also think that disciplining helps the child feel safe. And I think that's the parents' number
one
big
job.
thing is to keep the kids safe and to have them feeling safe. So if you're smacking your kid around, they're not going to feel safe.
Yeah.
Plus, that's also, I like to call it an adult temper tantrum.
It
When they
is.
smack a kid and they yell at a kid, it has absolutely nothing to do with the behavior. The parent is just so frustrated and so angry and doesn't know what else to do. So, whack.
I heard you make reference to it on one of the radio shows you were on. Excuse me. When a guy phoned in and he said he spanks his
Out of love.
kid. Wait, but he says he first explains why, and then I think your comment was, how do you spank a child? And first explain, I love you very much, and this is why I'm going to spank you. So
Yeah.
I'm going to.
Yeah.
It's like
It
That's just
doesn't make a lot of sense. It's also, it seems to me like it's a bit of payback to the child. Like, oh, you think you can do that to me in my house? La la la, smack. And part of it is your house. These are your rules. You have every right to enforce them, and you should, as a parent, enforce the rules. That way your child feels safe. If you ever feel guilty about it, just remember, I'm keeping this child safe. I'm keeping Madison safe. She is learning boundaries. So when she's 14, she thinks about her actions. It develops a sense of self-control. But getting back to the corporal punishment, when a parent has a tantrum, it teaches the child that you can't even control yourself. So what does it matter what I do? I don't need to control myself because you can't control yourself.
I think that's, for me, quite scary to make that realization, and I'm sure you can back that up, because I know from my own experience, kids learn by example.
They
sort
learn
of
by example.
absorb cellularly what their parents do. And you've just pointed it out now, and I start throwing tantrums and going nuts, or spanking, whatever. The kid obviously
She's going to
learns that,
learn
and
that's the
gonna be
way
her
in which
response.
to behave.
Yeah.
Then she'll probably hit another child when she gets frustrated, or she's in that situation, or she may end up
How am I
hitting you.
supposed to remember all of this? I mean, it's scary.
I
being a
think you
parent,
have
isn't
to
it?
be the best you can.
Yeah.
You know, you have to try and every day be the best version of yourself.
That's why I love the 1, 2, 3 magic. It's just, this is what it is, this is what you need to do, and this is why. They've done multiple studies, research initiatives on 1, 2, 3 magic in homes for children, in homes for families where people, there's abuse in the home. They actually send them to get 1, 2, 3 magic workshops, so they actually learn, okay, I do not have to smack my child. There is a way to do this that I was never taught. Breaking the cycle, basically.
I like the 1, 2, 3, but for me, I think as a psychologist, where the little bit of the gap is in terms of the emotion of it, you know, kind of leaving out the emotion. I think we all emotional beings. I think feelings often drive us, and I think that it's very important to give your child just as much as they need, you know, the physical support and the physical boundaries. Emotionally, they also need those boundaries, and they need to feel like they can trust you. And for me, I think, you know, that's where
I
there's a
agree
little
with
bit
you,
of a gap.
but when I use this method and it
It will work, though. I can imagine it working very
and then
effectively.
once it starts working, the child thinks about what they're doing, and you see it happening. You know, they're like, oh, I'm gonna do. Wait, hold on. I bet this is gonna get counted. And you know what that means? I don't have to discipline that kid, and we can engage, and we can have a really great time. And that I really like the positive engagement
Pauline,
with children.
Can I just ask you, obviously, if you buy into this concept from the beginning, like let's say before you give birth, you can start it off immediately and the kid
Yes,
gets
no,
used to it and it's
definitely.
easier.
Yeah.
How difficult is it to sort of change a discipline, an existing discipline pattern with this?
You can start this method as soon as you finish reading the book. You can sit your kids down and say, we are now running under new management. And this isn't something that is going to be a huge discussion. Just say, what we're going to do is, we're going to use this new method. I'm going to count. When I get to 3, this is what's going to happen. And on the other side of that, and be like, but we're introducing this as well. And you can do a star chart for positive behavior
reinforcement.
and things like that. But you're gonna integrate it. And when you do count a child the first time, you're gonna get to 3. Because the kid's like, yeah, right. It's
Exactly.
in your dream.
That's exactly what I want to do. Talk about, because in my experience, especially with Madison, 1 to 3 is probably going to be 1 to 100 before
She'll probably
it
laugh
gets there.
initially,
I
and
promise you,
it'll
I've
get
had 100% success
No,
with this.
I'm not contesting that. I think
Yeah.
it sounds pretty good, and obviously you wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't working.
Yeah.
But for parents out there who have kids like Madison who won't get 1 to 3 after the third thing, typically what is the sort of time frame you should give yourself before it kicks in? Like if you're starting a new
7 to 10 days for 1, 2, 3
Wow.
magic.
Okay.
Because you count them, they get to 3. And, you know, let me give you an example. Maybe that'll help. You have a 4-year-old who goes and grabs a bag of knickknacks
Yeah.
15 minutes before supper. No knickknacks before supper. But why? That's 1. That's 2, that's 3. And you give 5 seconds in between the 1 and the 2 and the 3, just to give the child a chance to flip it around.
Okay.
Next time they do that, let's say 20 minutes later, you hear them and they're banging something on the table. You look around the corner, that's 1. And they're gonna go, okay, maybe this isn't really worth my time, and go do something else. Or you can engage them right after that. Like, why don't you come help me with supper?
Okay.
But it'll work. I've used this method on children, autistic children, who have had absolutely no discipline at home, because it's very overwhelming for the parents to, not only do
Did you say autistic children?
Autistic children.
Wow.
And I had this one child who was hitting me, and I was giving him an iPad, and he wanted the game real bad. So he grabs it from me, and then he hits me, and I go, that's 1. And he just went, because he couldn't believe that he was being disciplined, and B, that somebody was looking at him, engaging him, and saying that's not appropriate.
But what you're also saying, just the way that you did that now, your body language, you've got to be firm. You can't say, that's 1, or that's 1. You got to, that's 1.
Yeah.
Because I got a fright now when you said that.
You have to be firm, but you don't have to be aggressive. Yeah. Because you're starting a fight, and everybody's adrenaline levels go up, and then what are you going to do?
Yeah. No, it sounds very interesting, and I think I'm going to give it a try.
Okay.
I'll keep you posted if it's actually working. We're talking discipline and the importance of discipline, but we've got to go for an ad break. We'll be right back. Don't go away. And we're back. We're talking discipline. We've established that it is indeed a vital part of our child's development, and that consequences of discipline, good or bad, will stay with your kid right into their adulthood. Layla, as parents, especially single parents, how important is it for both parents to be on the same page with regards to discipline? What's the impact if they're not?
I think the most important thing is for parents to always be on the same page of discipline. Remember, the child is most likely going to be moving from one house to another, and the rules need to be same in both houses. It needs to be consistent such that the child has that structure. It's very confusing when you go to dad's house and it's okay to leave your clothes lying around on the floor, whereas when you go to mom's house, it's not okay and you have to pack it. So, you need to definitely
you say
have
it's very
consistency.
confusing. I can tell you, as a single parent who has to deal with that kind of issue, it's very frustrating as well when you see your hard work being undone.
Because there's no consistency. So when your child comes back, he or she will say, why do I have to do this in this house and not do it in that house? So it's very important for both parents to sit, even if it's with a mediator, and work out every single day, just a schedule. This is what time Madison would go to sleep. Just using Madison as an example, This is what time she will wake up. This is what time bath time is. This is what time meals are, just so that everything is consistent for the child, and so that she has structure and she knows exactly, and children have structure, they feel safe. So if it's the same for mom and dad, it's less of a big jump moving across, whereas it's constantly a move, then you get used to it for a few days and then you have to go back to a new home, then you get used to it. And even the bedroom, sometimes it's nice to even have the bedrooms almost the same in both houses.
No, that makes sense, because I find because my home scenario is completely different to her mom's home scenario. She's got 2 elder brothers, teenagers, and a sister, and they have teenage issues, and she kind of gets away with certain things. In my house, it's just me and her and Hannah. So, it's been interesting. But what I've noticed is that she's actually adapted. When she walks into my house, it's like she puts on a different mindset because she knows she's got to behave the way Daddy wants her to behave. And it's quite interesting to see that kids evolve or adapt like that. But at the end of the day, you actually don't want that. You want them to feel safe and
everywhere.
You don't
want her to have to almost put on a shell when she goes from one place to the other and to be 2 different people. You want her to actually just be. But children are remarkable like that. They are very hardy and resilient, and they can adapt quite easily. But it's definitely important for parents to be on the same page. Going to discipline, which what the topic is about. If parents aren't on the same page and don't support each other in exactly the same discipline methods, or if the child does something wrong, immediately take them to a time out, or if they're doing the 1, 2, 3, start the 1, 2, 3. If one parent does it and the other one doesn't, the child knows, I can manipulate mommy, or I can manipulate daddy. You've got to definitely have a structure.
Pauline, the 1, 2, 3 magic program, is it aimed specifically at dual couples, or
No,
can
no,
it be
no,
applied to
it's
single couples?
Everyone,
Single
for
parents, yeah.
single families. It also helps definitely when a single parent in a single parent situation, because it can give the child that structure, that and the routine and everything, and they know exactly where their boundaries are. Because as a single parent, you have to do both roles, and you have to do them as efficiently as possible. And sometimes when you have a lot of disciplining to do, you lose the fun stuff, you lose that precious time that you have. So if you implement something like 1, 2, 3 magic, and maybe it's going on in the other house, maybe not. Sometimes you got to choose your battles and say, I understand it's different at mom's house, but guess what, here, this is how it works.
Where else is I mean, I'm talking internationally now, is the program, or the 1, 2, 3 magic program available? And tell me a little bit about the research and the results and that kind of stuff.
Definitely. 1, 2, 3 magic is the #1 discipline method in the States. It's also in the UK, in Canada, and in Australia.
How long has it been around?
20 years.
Okay.
And I've been practicing it for 13 years. So I was a nanny, and the lady gave me the book and said, this is how we're going. It was great because she got everybody in on it. She had me read it, she had the grandparents read it, and they were like, oh, pish,
the
no.
Consistency, can you see? This is where it's very
They threw it back in her
important.
face. But then once they noticed that the kids were behaving really nicely, they're like, oh, this actually works, huh? And we're like, yeah, we all read the book.
Okay.
And the research on it is consistently positive. They definitely have caught on to something here. Now, that's not to say other books like How to Talk So Your Kids Will Listen and How to Listen So Your Kids Will Talk aren't valuable. They really are, but this is just an instructional method that gives you immediate results.
Layla, our parents obviously come from a different era, and I'm just thinking now, my mom was one of 9 kids, and her dad my grandpa was in the army back then. And he used to blitzen them. I mean, literally. She's got 5 brothers and 4 daughters, and they used to get like hidings. And that's why she used to blitzen me. Now, I understand that whole thing. Some of us, parents out there, are battling with this issue because, I know it still happens. People still spank their kids and that kind of thing. And maybe there are parents who want to stop, want to break the cycle. I mean, how do they do it? I mean, you obviously offer a service. What can they expect? And how do you guys counsel people through that process? I mean, can it be broken, that cycle?
I think any cycle can be broken if you are aware of it. If you're a parent and you've realized that I have inherited certain parenting tips or ideas or ways in which I'm doing things from my parents, and I actually didn't like that as a child, and I want to break that, come through to a psychologist for something called psychoeducation. Sit down, and chat a bit about the various options that you could be doing and try to work through different ways and different methods to do something, because corporal punishment is really not the answer. All it does is make your child angry and defiant, breaks down self-esteem. Find a different way of doing it, whether it's using the 1, 2, 3 or using any of the other, psychological tips that we give.
Like what, for example? Give me a psychological tip that would, along the lines of 1, 2, 3 magic, that probably is happening, but it's not, labeled like that.
So, for example, if Madison is putting her finger into the socket, I would say something like, Madison, come and talk to me. Let me tell you, I love you so much and I care so much about you, and you're the most precious thing in the world. And when you put your finger in that socket, you're going to get hurt, you're going to get electrocuted. You can even maybe show her, on a YouTube video or something, something obviously that's PG for her. This is what could possibly happen to you, and this is why. Yeah, you have to watch it yourself first
of course.
before. But tell her, make sure that you're reinforcing her, and that you're not reinforcing the behavior. And some children, they just act out to the point where parents actually can't deal with it, and then they send them through, and we do something called play therapy on them, because for children their means of communication is not by talking but actually by play. Through play we help to create boundaries, we help to create structure. We later on, sometimes I then bring in the parents once I've established structure in the room, watch a few sessions with them working together with the parent putting in boundaries, and that also has to be implemented at home. So what's happening in the playroom then also happens in the home. And for example, in play therapy, when they come in, you say you can be in many different ways in this room. You can be happy, sad. You can play in many different ways, but you can't play in all ways. So they know that boundary is already there.
We keep going back to the role of discipline in terms of setting boundaries, and I've certainly learned as a parent, looking at some of my friends and how they've developed with no. One example that I have to raise, I've got a cousin who I hope isn't watching the show, and we grew up completely differently. You know, my mom was very strict. I almost said his name. His mom and dad were very sort of relaxed and whatever, and he turned out very differently. You know, the boundary issues really is so important. I can't stress it enough. And some parents think it's cool to let their kids stay up all night or to let them get away, but it's really not cool. It messes you up.
You need
really
that
does.
structure. I mean, when you start working and when you're studying, you need to know, I need to sleep at Babel to this time so I can wake up in the morning, I can be fresh, I can then do this. You need to actually have that structure, otherwise you go to university, you stay up all night, you fail, you...
One thing that I brought up before is that if you use the 1, 2, 3 magic, you'll start seeing the child using self-control. And if you get them at a young age where they say, okay, maybe I shouldn't do that, when they get to things like university, they have a really good practice.
I would imagine, Pauline, that if you start that 1, 2, 3 magic from the beginning, the child itself, when it finds itself in a situation where it needs to be disciplined, something will go off in its mind that'll say 1.
Yep.
That's probably what happens.
This is what has happened with every child. Just the other day with my student, I said, that's 1. And I haven't counted her, I don't know how long. And she just looked at me and said, oh, I really messed up. And then I said, you need to clean that up, please. And she cleaned it up. And she came up to me. This is a child who has barely any speech. She comes up, she goes, Sawi, Sawi, like that, you know, just naturally, because she realized I messed up. I didn't even have to say anything to her. And it's really nice to see these thought processes starting to establish themselves. And then when you go out, something that really bothers me is this little adult assumption. So you're at Woolies and the mom is pushing the trolley and she's got a screaming child in that candy aisle. Now, sweetie, I'm sorry, I cannot get you any of these things because if I get you something, then I have to get your sister something and we're going to have supper when we get home. Do you think that child is hearing a word you're saying?
You need to ignore that child, and that child will eventually calm down and realize that A, she's not getting a reaction, and B, she's definitely not getting what he or she wants. And when the child is calm, then you can then give some kind of an explanation.
Yeah, but now people watching the show is probably listening to the two of you and saying, have you ever been down a trolley like that?
Yeah.
And it's Saturday morning and it's crazy and it's hot and whatever. To be calm like that, I need to have drugs.
I think it's difficult. I think no one's perfect. I think as a parent, as I said, you've got to be the best that you can be every day. Some days you have good days, some days you have bad days. You know, but overall,
and establish what's going to happen in Woolies. Park the car. Listen, if you guys behave, you can get something that's 7 rand, up to 7 rand, and that's it. If you don't, sorry. So you're in the candy aisle. They've got they're clinging onto that 7 rand treat, and all of a sudden they see something else, they start freaking out. That's 1. They're gonna go, oh gosh, oh gosh, what should I do? You know, they're trying really hard, but they'll learn that self-control.
But Leila, what I'm hearing from both of you actually is, whatever you do with the kid, try to be consistent. Don't try something new
is so important.
and then change. And I think what's difficult for us parents is we try something. We're living in the instant gratification age, so we want to try something new and we expect results tomorrow. But what you both are saying is give it some time, you know, give yourself some time.
I'm telling you the 1, 2, 3 magic will work in 4 days. What's going to happen is...
Or your money back.
In 14... I don't know. No, it's gone already. In 14 days, it's going to start not working. And you're going to call me and you're going to say, it's not working. I go, are you talking too much? Are you using too much emotion? Because you can go, that's 1. I swear to you, if I get to 2, things are not going to look good for you.
So that's the emotion she's talking about that you're saying is missing.
No, not that type of
not that type.
No, I'm talking about it. I'm talking about the type of emotion where it's that nurturing. For me, the 1, 2, 3 sounds amazing, but where the problem may possibly come in for me is getting the child, where the child almost feels like a sense of guilt if they're doing something wrong.
But come on, I mean, isn't guilt part of the learning process?
I think guilt is part of the learning process, but you wouldn't want a child where as soon as they start to do something, they've got to think, is this right, is it wrong, am I going to get counted 1, 2, 3?
I'm thinking wrong.
I think you also want to let your child, you know, explore a little bit, roll a little bit.
I don't know so much about it. It depends on the issue.
It depends on the issue. I mean, if it's something as little as, you know, painting and messing around a little bit, for me I think that's kind of okay, you know, but you don't want to be a situation where your child is scared to do something in case they're getting 1, 2, 3. You've got to balance it out, but that's with anything, you know, you have to have
it gives the parents an option, a viable option that they probably desperately need some guidance, and then you can develop it to your own thing, but it works.
Yeah. Well, I think we can sit here and talk for another hour on this subject.
I think the two of us could debate for quite a long time.
Yeah. I think it's time to wrap up basically, but I think the key issue for me is corporal punishment definitely out. It's last season, last century.
It's out of style.
Yeah, out of style. There we go. So timeout seems to be in, 1 to 3 magic seems to be in. I think the way to success in terms of discipline is to be consistent and to be loving and caring in whatever you do.
Yeah.
But be firm. I think that's also very important. No limp-wristed parenting, that's not going to work.
And consistent,
And make-
both
Yeah.
parents.
And make sure that you're taking care of yourself as a person. Because if you're depressed and you're feeling overwhelmed, you're not going to be able to do it effectively.
Okay, great. Well, there you have it. Be firm, be loving, take care of your children, and be the boss. You are the adult, so behave like an adult. And as we've been saying, children need to feel safe, and that's your primary role as a parent. I hope you've learned something tonight. I think I certainly have. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. Looking forward to seeing you again.